St. Lucia, and welcome to yet another episode of What's Happening Now with Laura. As you can see emblazoned on my t-shirt, I am very, extremely pissed off. Over this past week, there have been a number of issues in the news worthy of mention, but one in particular stands out for me. There are a couple more that I will speak about, or at least one other that I will speak about, and tie in a couple of other issues that have been circulating in our environment for a number of years now. But to begin with, I will start with the dialysis dilemma. I feel that renal patients in this country are being used as a political football. And I term it dialysis football. And I'll tell you why. Those of you who have been following my show for the last few years will realize and will appreciate, acknowledge even, that one of my dearest friends is herself a renal patient. So it was very disturbing to me when I heard last week that a patient had expired pretty much on a dialysis machine, and that representatives from, or a representative from the St. Lucia Dental and Medical Association in the person of its president, Dr. Alphonsus St. Rose, pretty much basically blaming the fact that the dialysis center, the dialysis unit, or the dialysis department, however you want to term it, is a standalone department in an otherwise uncommissioned hospital, being the OKEU hospital. That was very worrisome for me, because if anybody knows me and knows me well, things like dialysis crash, and really and truly there is no term such as dialysis crash, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But anything to do with patients, renal patients, dialysis patients, gets me jittery every time. And my thoughts go straight to my girlfriend, who's like a sister to me. So here I was, very worried. And in particular, when the leading opposition party in St. Lucia jumped on board. And a lot of times, politicians do that. They try to score political points, cheap or otherwise, at the expense of their counterparts. But more so disturbing for me was the fact that Dr. St. Rose sounded the clarion call, as if to say, and that was the impression that I got. And I hope that is not the impression that he wanted to convey, but it is the impression that I got nonetheless, and that many other St. Lucians got nonetheless. That it was a foolhardy decision for this government or any administration to remove the dialysis department from an aged and decrepit, failing, or rather declining department, and replace it with a brand spanking new one at facilities that, to my mind, was more comfortable, more amenable, more accommodating to patients, renal patients. And there came Dr. Merle. Let us hear what Dr. Merle had to say in response to, before we go to Dr. Merle, let us hear what Dr. St. Rose had to say about the death of Mr. Curtis Marius, and then we'll listen to Dr. Merle's response to that. And then you'll get an idea as to how discombobulating this whole saga is. Let's roll the tape.
According to the association's president, the transition to OKEU was one of convenience for the government rather than one of national importance. Dr. Alphonsus St. Rose added that the transition is too slow, disjointed, and dysfunctional. He says beyond the death, there are broader and equally important issues at the state-of-the-art health institution which need to be addressed.
If you're going to move services within a hospital are all interconnected, and some more than others. So you have to be cognizant of those issues so you do not put patients, particularly patients, at unnecessary risk and derive unacceptable outcomes.
The dialysis unit was the first unit moved to the new facility on Wednesday, 24th January 2018. Dr. St. Rose believes this should not have been the first unit to be transferred, especially without the requisite ancillary services in place.
That to me is the broader point. When we are going to do things, we need to think it through. We need to think it realistically. It has to be clinically driven, and we have to understand the context in which those things are being done. So the death may be, I'm not looking for any smoking gun here. No, not at all. The death may or may not have been directly related to the whole issue of the dialysis unit being there. We will only know that subsequently when we get the details, and I'm not privy to the details of that, so I can't speak to that right now. But what I can say is we need to do a certain level of risk management. We need to do a bit of forward planning, and we need to understand and appreciate those interconnections. So when we move departments, we know that the necessary structures are there in the event anything happens.
The government has been heavily criticized by various groups and organizations, including the opposition Labour Party and the SLMDA, for its handling of the transition and general management of the healthcare sector. For the DBS News World, I am Sheffield Gillard.
Interconnected services. What interconnected services is Dr. St. Rose alluding to? Interconnected services more so than others. Auxiliary services. Does Dr. St. Rose realize that all over the world, including the great US of A, including right here in St. Lucia, and I'm not sure if the center, the clinic in St. Lucia is defunct, open, or otherwise, but I know that there was a standalone dialysis clinic in St. Lucia, right here in the city. And that, right within that clinic, there was no emergency room. And that if ever there was an emergency, they were within close distance of a health center, which they would refer their patients to, transfer the patients to. And if the health center could not accommodate, they would then take them a little further afield to the VH hospital, to Victoria Hospital. So what exactly is Dr. St. Rose alluding to? Now, I'm very upset with Dr. St. Rose, and let me explain to you. I tried my darnest to get to Dr. St. Rose before I came to studio, before I had this show, while planning this show, and I did not get him. And I'm not surprised. I am absolutely not surprised that I was unable to get Dr. St. Rose on the phone. And it could be that there is some other way to get Dr. St. Rose, but I went through the channel that I knew how, and I am not surprised that I didn't get Dr. St. Rose, because I too was a patient of Dr. St. Rose once upon a time. And as a patient of Dr. St. Rose, it was very, very difficult for me to get in touch with Dr. St. Rose as his patient, so I am not surprised. Should I say that I am displeased with Dr. St. Rose? That I hear what he has to say and I take it with a grain of salt? Absolutely, because my personal experience with Dr. St. Rose is not one I hold in high regard or high esteem, and primarily because when I needed my doctor, it was very difficult to get a hold of him. Now, that may not be the case for many of you, but it was my case. It was my experience. And so I am not surprised that I was unable to get in touch with Dr. St. Rose to get a comment from him directly, because there were a few questions that I wanted to ask him. So I'm going to ask on air, and I know if he's not watching, somebody else will be watching, and they will ask him. And they will point him in my direction, and they will tell him he may choose to give me a call, or he may choose not to, but that's his prerogative. So I want to know what auxiliary services that is so imperative to be had at a dialysis clinic that is not available at the OKEU, that is not available at a standalone clinic all over the world. Did you even know that there are dialysis clinics around the world at malls, shopping malls? Yes, in shopping malls. They don't have an emergency room. And if ever, what has happened, as unfortunate as it is, to Mr. Marius, happened to any one of these patients, exactly what was done at the OKEU would have been done. Nothing different. And in all of my research and in all the calls that I made, that was the exact same response that I got. So let us hear what Dr. Merle has to say about Dr. St. Rose's comments. Roll the tape.
Since the death of the dialysis patient on August 3rd, the government has been under pressure from the Medical and Dental Association as well as the opposition Labour Party for its handling of the transition to the Owen King EU Hospital. The SLP has blamed the death on the absence of the necessary support services at the relocated dialysis unit. Dr. Merle Clark holds a different view.
The implication or that the patient died because he was at the Owen King EU dialysis unit is false. And I think categorically you could say that based on our post-mortem results, based on the actions that were taken when the patient went into cardiorespiratory arrest. Whether this patient had gone into arrest at the ER, in an ICU, on an open ward in the hospital, no matter where it had been, the actions that were taken is exactly what would have been taken there and what should have happened. CPR, or cardiopulmonary resuscitation, was initiated immediately. I was called and I led the effort, the CPR effort, which as it turned out was not successful and we did eventually lose him.
Dr. Clark says the patient was efficiently transferred to the ICU at the Victoria Hospital. However, the patient died.
There's been so much which has been said, basically, and I think it really is unfortunate that a death could be this sensational. And we would just like to ask St. Lucians, we implore St. Lucians to stop. Allow the renal community, allow his family to mourn in peace, allow our patient to rest in peace. Our operations at the Owen King EU Hospital, the dialysis unit, we function fairly well. Are we better off than we were at our old unit at Victoria Hospital? We certainly are. The conditions are better. The machines are new. They are working well. They're working efficiently. We have no problems with them. Our old machines at VH were very aged. They had long past their time. Patients were cramping a lot. So the idea that the unit was moved over and it was an irresponsible move, I disagree with that. I think if for a minute I thought it would have been irresponsible to move the patients, I would not have agreed with it, because that would mean I'm complicit in doing something which is to the detriment of patients. And my reason for being, the reason I work, the reason I'm a nephrologist, is to take care of those patients and do the very best that I can for them. So that, to me, is personal.
Dr. Clark says a dialysis unit can be a standalone unit. However, patients with chronic kidney disease may experience complications, which was the case with the patient who passed away. The patient would have died despite their efforts to keep him alive. It is sad, she says, but that's the reality of chronic kidney disease.
Now, I hope you listened very carefully to what Dr. Merle had to say. And this is a doctor that I hold in very high regard. Dr. Merle is one of those doctors who is very conscientious. Whether you are her patient or not, if you reach out to her, she will give you the time of day. In particular, that you are a renal patient. In particular, since we do not have that many nephrologists, we have 2 that I know of in St. Lucia. Very conscientious when it comes to renal patients. Dr. St. Rose said he can't speak to what exactly happened, but he was quick to go and give a comment to anyone who had ears to hear. Meanwhile, a member of his association, Dr. Merle, was never consulted before he went out. She could have given him some sort of information, exactly what she gave us right there and in the clipping that we just saw, and advised him otherwise. Did he even think to consult? All of the consultation that he's asking for of the government, and mind you, I don't have a problem with the government consulting the people or the associations that have been given custodial rights over a certain area. I have no issues and no qualms with that. However, should you not be taking a dose of your own medicine? Should you not be doing the exact same thing that you are claiming that others should do? Since you know it all. Since you know it all. Since your medical degree encompasses so much more than your area of speciality, shouldn't you have known that you had to consult with the consultant nephrologist who is a member of your association? That would have made too much sense, I would think. Way too much sense. That makes absolutely no sense to me. So you don't know what happened. You cannot speak to the specificity of what happened, but you could give a comment. What happens to no comment at this time until I am fully briefed? Remember that phrase or something thereabouts? No comment until I am fully briefed. I have no idea what we're talking about. I would like to get further information before. You know, there is a saying that goes, it is better to shut your mouth, or rather, it is rather to be thought of a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Now, am I calling the doctor a fool? By no means is he a fool. He's a doctor, after all. He's a practicing, well-known physician, so he isn't a fool. But why is he picking up the mantle and carrying that cloak of foolishness? Makes no sense to me. Absolutely no sense. Because Dr. St. Rose seems to be, for the past few weeks and months, the doctor of everything. Stepping outside of his realm to comment on things that I think, as a medical doctor, that he really should not be commenting on. Everybody has an opinion on something. But if it is not your area of speciality, if it is not your area, an area which you know absolutely everything on, and you're only proffering a layman's opinion, you ought to state that. You ought to state that. As most of us doctors do, we don't know everything, but we research and we talk about things that we research and we have the answers to, or that there is evidence, information to support what we say. And we give, more importantly, our opinion, our layperson's opinion on those matters. Dr. St. Rose, on the other hand, carries a different mandate. And I think, especially as the president of the SLMDA, he ought to recognize the position that he's in and recognize that every time he opens his mouth to make a pronouncement on things medical or otherwise, he is representing not just himself, but other doctors. And so, when he says what he said in the clip that we showed, he, in effect, was thrusting Dr. Merle and her credibility and her integrity under the bus. And as a woman who believes in women's rights and their professionalism and always stands up for women when they are right, I will not stand for it. I will not sit by and allow Dr. St. Rose to cast aspersions, whether it was meant or not, on Dr. Merle, because she's absolutely right. All across the world, not just in St. Lucia, not just in our region, but all across the world, in the US, in the UK, everywhere, in Canada, there are clinics specifically set up for dialysis. That's all they do. They're called dialysis clinics, and they are not attached to a hospital, which means they do not have an operating room, an emergency room, in case a patient crashes or whatever. What I found out from the numerous calls that I made is that these doctors, these medical professionals, would do exactly what Dr. Merle says: stabilize, perform CPR, stabilize the patient, and move the patient to a medical facility which can provide that additional care. So that takes care of Dr. St. Rose. But it is no surprise, whilst I was surprised at Dr. St. Rose's remarks, it is no surprise that the main opposition would now jump on that to score cheap political points in this regard. Let's hear what the politicians have to say.
The opposition has pressured the government to move the accompanying services for patients on dialysis from the Victoria Hospital to the Owen King EU Medical Facility. The opposition claims that it has been reliably informed that the recent death of a patient on dialysis at the Owen King EU Hospital was as a result of the lack of the support services there. Prime Minister Alan Chastanet says he is not surprised that the opposition would hasten to make the link. He says government is awaiting the post-mortem results before making any determination.
I knew that they wouldn't resist being able to make that correlation, which is, we don't know. So the autopsy is being done and we'll determine what the cause of death was. But do you think that people have not died on dialysis previously? Whether you were at Victoria or not. I mean, and we'll look at the conditions that were at Victoria.
Prime Minister Chastanet says it would cost the government $70 million to fully operationalize the Owen King EU facility fully. Money which he says the government does not have.
Where is the money going to come from? To move in is $70 million, but we have recognized we cannot wait. And so we've started the process of moving into OKU. And we're hoping to be able, by the end of the year, to be fully operational in that location.
The Prime Minister also indicated that the additional wing for the St. Jude Hospital will be constructed on the current site, contrary to reports that it will be built at another location. For the DBS News World, I am Don Nicholas.
And so, if we listen to the Prime Minister, did he seem a little nonplussed? Who can blame him? After all, this is the same Prime Minister that, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people were laughing at because he seemed to be the crying Prime Minister, especially when he talks about dialysis. During his campaign, he always talked about at least moving the machines. Immediately, almost immediately, I should say, after the United Workers' Party had won the elections, there was a clamor, a clarion call for the move of the dialysis unit to the OKEU. Because the Prime Minister had made such the leader of opposition, had made such a hullabaloo about the sorry state of the dialysis unit at VH. And that even though the OKEU had not been commissioned, that he felt that the dialysis unit could have been moved. And so it would have seemed passing strange, more than passing strange actually, had the Prime Minister not done anything and moved the dialysis unit. And from what my information is, there was consultation and the move was made, and for the most part, it was a successful move. I mean, the number of times that Dr. Merle has been on my show talking about or lamenting the fact that the dialysis unit at VH was not really meeting the productivity levels that were needed. And you can never, ever, no matter which country you're in, provide dialysis services to all the patients who require it. It's just physically impossible. I mean, the number of patients that you have coming in and the length of time that people are surviving renal failure, it just makes it a little impossible, especially for developing states like ours. She's always lamented that. And she was one of those who was very happy that the move was made and that subsequent to that, other units were made available to increase the capacity of dialysis services in St. Lucia. Did Dr. St. Rose not know that before he decided to talk about the things that he cannot talk about? Because by his own admission, he can't speak to what really happened because he doesn't know. So maybe he should have waited. And maybe before Mr. Pierre went on to lambaste the current administration, the government of St. Lucia, it would have done him well to maybe confer with there are not that many. There are only 2 nephrologists on island. How could you not even, unless he conferred with the president of the SLMDA and he'd assured him that his opinion is the opinion that matters. It really is sad. What is even sadder, if I could say, is that when I heard of that death, my heart skipped a beat, stopped, squeezed, resuscitated. All sorts of things happened in my chest. Because as I said earlier at the top of the show, my dearest friend is a renal patient. And I hoped and prayed that you did not hear about this death and the sensationalism surrounding that death. Because what we seem to be forgetting is that there are surviving patients that Dr. Clark and her team have to deal with, that need to be debriefed every time they lose a renal patient. And even more so now, because of all the sensationalism that surrounds this death, with not enough information. I remember one time when my friend was telling me she was near gone. She was on dialysis and they had to quickly bring her back. That hurt. And to know that there was a patient who wasn't so lucky as she was and expired brings to the fore the very reality that these patients are extremely more compromised than the rest of us. Let us please drop this matter and stop using it as a political football. Allow the patient's family to grieve properly for the loved ones, and that the surviving patients can be debriefed and pick up themselves and go on about the business of living. Because that is why they're dialysis patients, because they want to live. It's only that they have to go through an extraordinary amount of inconveniences to do what the rest of us take so much for granted. There is the issue of the surviving patients who must be so worried and so concerned and I mean, you staring this death. I mean, this is a young man who was part of a community, because every dialysis patient that I speak with talk about the other patients like family. And to lose a family member is no easy feat. And to talk about it so callously, as if it's just par for the course. It's ridiculous. And doctors nonetheless, and those other persons, the politicians who ask to be the custodian of our affairs, as well as those who are the custodians of our affairs, need to be cognizant of the fact that while they're out sparring with each other, the ones left to catch it in the neck are the very same ones that they taken vows to serve, protect, and to take care of. We're due for a break. When we come back, the second reason why I am pissed off. Welcome back. Bigamy, the act of going through a marriage ceremony while already married to another person. Did you know that bigamy in St. Lucia is illegal? Well, you ought to, because us women could be very unsuspecting. We could totally be dating a man, planning to get married, getting married to said man, only to find out he already has a wife. Or we could be so cunning and conniving that while we're moving with a married man, put sufficient pressure to bear on said man because we want him all to ourselves, forcing him to break the law. But what if said man is a law enforcement officer? What if said man is a law enforcement officer? So here he is, having 2 wives, which should not be, because it's illegal in St. Lucia. But not only that, he is now shunning his responsibilities as a father to said first wife and not caring for his child or his children. What does that do to a child's psyche? Seeing his mom hurt every day, being verbally abused, psychologically abused by a father who professed before man and God to love, protect, and provide for his family. To watch a father, a man, whom said little boy or little girl looked up to as a demigod, for love, protection, and provision. And to see that demigod, that superhero, cast you aside like so much garbage, like a pesky little fly, and not even take care of your most basic needs, even though he is promised before a court of law to do just that. What do you think will come of this child? And what hurts and makes me even more pissed off is to know that there is a woman who is encouraging that behavior, encouraging and spurring on that behavior. Let me just remind you of one little boy whose father was not strong enough to resist the cunningness, the conniving of his wife, to the point that he lost his life. Remember little Milan Ferdinand? Milan Ferdinand lost his life through abuse, physical abuse. I am not too certain what the outcome, if there has been a court case heard, but we do remember that the stepmother involved in Milan's case had been arrested and charged with causing his death. And when you look at the pictures that have been circulating, that was circulating at the time, of the happy couple, all smiles, who could think that such innocent faces would cause the demise of a child who was in their custody? And that is the word for tonight: custody, custodians. And what does that conjure? People who are supposed to care, take care of something or someone. Which brings me back to, I am so furious right now just thinking about it. My hairs are standing on edge. I received a call. A about a little girl. We'll call her the daughter of St. Lucia, who has had her innocence ripped away from her callously by a predator. We'll call him the father of St. Lucia. And no, I'm not referring to Sir John. And that little girl, being only 12 years old, had been neglected not by her biological father, but by her mother, her grandmother, who left said little girl to care for her siblings, all under the age of 10, her being just about 12 years old. Left at the mercy of any callous and unscrupulous person, known or unknown to her, to violate her. And violate her he did, to the point that she got pregnant. No big surprise here. We have had 9-year-olds in St. Lucia raped, murdered, robbed of the life that was before them, because some son of a gun decided that he needed to exert ultimate control over that child and to take from her that which she should be holding near and dear to her until she is ready to gift it to someone that she perhaps has deep feelings for. But you come in like a wolf to devour, to rape, rip, and plunder. And then have the nerve to say, it wasn't me, yet run away. And then that mother, that excuse of a mother, to say, I don't want to get involved. I don't know nothing about it. How could you have a young child pregnant in your home and not know? How could you? How could you have a young child, 10 years old or so thereabouts, pregnant in your home and not know? Aren't you supposed to be the one to provide her with her monthly necessities? We all know about that. Every single woman knows, especially those of us who started menstruating at a very young age, that once a month, every month, our mothers are in our personal business. Yep, because they have to provide for us the necessities required to take care of ourselves once a month. So when a child is in your home, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, pregnant, and you say, I did not know anything about it, whom exactly do you think you're fooling? And so, you become an incubator for the fathers of St. Lucia to continue raping the daughters of St. Lucia and perpetuating the rape culture. It is so unfortunate, and that is putting it mildly. Because unfortunate is a term that you use when you've gambled all your money. You took a risk and you lost it all. Unfortunate is what happens when you marry a man and realize while you're married to him, during the course of the marriage, that he's an alcoholic. Unfortunate is the term that you use when you've raised your child right. You know you've done right by him, and he turns around. You've provided everything for him, and he turns around and steals other people's things. That is an unfortunate set of circumstances. A stepfather raping his stepdaughter is not an unfortunate set of circumstances. It is barbaric, it is egregious, and it ought to be dealt with the fullest brunt of the law. How many times do we have to ask the questions? Do we care? What if, and I'm going to ask another question tonight, what if it were your daughter? What if you came home and someone else had to tell you your daughter is pregnant? She lives with you. You are her primary caregiver. What if you were walking down the street and observed a man abusing a child which is not yours? What would you do? What if somebody came to you and said to you, what if your child, for that matter, came to you and said to you, Mommy, my stepfather is peeping on me. He's watching me while I'm bathing. What would your response be? Would you thrust your child under the bus? Would you cast her out and throw her out with the bath water? Or him, for that matter? In particular, the boys. Because a lot of the times the boys just don't even talk because they know they will be ridiculed. Because it says to the mother that if her boyfriend is raping her son, he must be the B word. And so what would you do if your daughter came to you and said to you that my stepfather is touching me inappropriately? What would you do? Would you believe her, or would you say to her, you're nasty, that's why he's watching you while you're bathing, so he has to ensure that you're bathing properly? Or would you say to her, he's not touching you inappropriately, he's just being affectionate? What if you were in those shoes? What would you do? What if you were a teacher and you observed one of your students suddenly having a different disposition, coming from bubbly to withdrawn and reserved, coming from an A student to a C student, exhibiting lewd signs, all of a sudden being very suggestive, being very open to boys, exposing her very private parts, or covering up excessively when it comes to sports, swimming, athletics, whatever the case may be. What would you do? But if you were a catechist, for those of us who are Catholic, and you notice that a child who always was involved in Bible studies, always involved, always have the right answers, all of a sudden sitting to the back of the class, absconding from class, not coming to class when they know they're supposed to be in class, what would you do? What would you do if you were a social worker and a father? And I know a lot of you are asking, but in the scenario that you mentioned, where is the father? Because you're really coming down on the mother, where is the father? But what would you do if a father came to you and said to you, I suspect something not being right with my daughter. And so I took measures in place to find out. And I found out that she's pregnant. And I also found out that the mother knew nothing about it. Not aware at all, clueless. And on top of that, the mother is defending the alleged accused. What would you do as a social worker? Would you be in support of the father and try to get to the bottom of this? Or would you just say, you know what? Moms are always right, and say, to hell with your father. and push you away, push the father away, what would you do? Would it surprise you, St. Lucia, to know that in 2018, we still have fathers of St. Lucia raping daughters of St. Lucia with impunity? And not only are the fathers of St. Lucia raping the daughters of St. Lucia, but those of us who want, and here comes the word again, who want to be custodians of our affairs, representing the vilest type of rapist that there is, a pedophile. Everybody, and there are those of you who are going to say that deserve to be, or to deserve to have legal representation when accused. But if you are going to come to me asking me to place my trust and my faith in you and those of my yet of age children in your hands, you better believe, you better come to me with clean hands, especially when you already have a reputation, alleged or otherwise, of being a rapist yourself. When you have been accused of raping yourself and you decide that the best course of action for you is to represent a pedophile, you better think long, hard, and fast before you come to me, or any St. Lucian for that matter, and ask them to have faith in you so that you can be the custodian of their affairs. You better think long and hard about it. And this is the point I want us St. Lucians, in particular us mothers, to get to. It's not every fly-by-night artist, con artist or otherwise, who comes to us and says to us, I will take care of your affairs, because he looks pretty, because his family or her family have title, because they have in the past done community service, that you're not to look long and hard at the wolf that is coming to you in sheep's clothing, asking you to allow them to be your representation, in particular when they have already proven to be a wolf. To be a wolf. I remember in the last election campaign in the US of A, Mrs. Clinton was excoriated because of a decision that she made decades ago as a young attorney to represent an alleged rapist. And because she believed that every accused deserved proper legal representation, the American people never let her forget it. And it dogged her all these decades later. And it erased all of the good that she had ever done. And it near annihilated her. That she once, as a young attorney, with stars and ideals still in her eyes, represented an accused rapist. Why can't we do the same in St. Lucia? Why can't we do the same? Because I know the time will come when once again certain persons are going to come to us and ask us to allow them to be representatives in our most august and honorable house. And we're going to sprinkle on holy water all over it and say it's water under the bridge. Water under the bridge. What would you do if you were faced with this dilemma? What would you do? What would you do if it were your daughter, if it were your son, that someone had so violently raped? And I'm going to tell you some of the pictures we're going to show are very, very, very graphic, because it seems to me that it's only when these set of circumstances present themselves, that's when it becomes a reality. Because a child was not violently ripped apart and burnt and shredded, it didn't happen. It's not rape. Look at it, St. Lucia. Look at those images. Yes, it didn't happen in our part of the world, but what is to prevent it from happening? What is preventing it from happening? Look at the anguish on the families' faces. Look at it. This could be you. This could be me. What are we waiting for to get up, rise up, and stand up and say enough is enough is enough is enough, and we're not going to have any of it anymore? What is it going to take? Do we wait for something like this to happen for us to take stock of what's happening around us and say, no, I am not going to let it happen in my backyard. I am not going to let it come close to me. I am not going to. I am going to stop it, stamp it out. What is it going to take? But I forget, it has happened here. We need only to remember young Valinda Joseph, who had been raped time and time and time again, and nothing had been done, and the system let her down until such time she was murdered, much like these little girls in those pictures we just showed you. What are we waiting for? Are we waiting for it to hit home to us? Are we waiting for it to be our little girls? Are we waiting for it to be our nieces? What are we waiting for? Can we not stop and think about our future generation and not just ourselves? What are we waiting for? Why can't we just stop being selfish and look beyond the tips of our noses? And for me, that's not very far. And so I will always stand up and rise up and be counted. And for the fathers who try their hardest to be there for the children and get the runaround and get the push off, I stand resolute with you, as should every mother who cares about her children, regardless of what has happened between the two of you. If a man comes to you with the sole intention of raping your child and killing your child effectively, it is incumbent upon you to rise up and to be there for your child. We need only remember Mary Ratcliffe, who literally was decapitated for her child. She lost her head over her child. This is the love that we should have for our children. This is where we should be at. This is what it should take. Why aren't we lobbying our government officials, the women in parliament, to be women and to be there for our future generation? Our national anthem says sons and daughters of St. Lucia, but it does not say that the fathers of St. Lucia should be raping and killing them. When are we going to stop? It is 2018 and we're still dealing with those same issues and we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. And instead of us moving forward with all of the advances, there are still mothers who say that their children are lying. And there are still social workers who take their jobs so callously. It's like, okay, it's just a job. You know, I am so overworked. But you know what? It is a vocation. And if you took this job because it was just meant to be that, just a job, please resign. Our children need you. Our mothers and fathers need you, particularly those who were children themselves when they birthed these little babies. You're doing nobody a service. You're just there occupying damn space. Let us say we don't have the resources. Let us say we have no professionals in the field. Let it not be that there are people taking up space and doing nothing because they're burnt out. Do your part. Lobby your bosses, the directors, the PSAs, the ministers. Do what you need to do, but stop, for crying out loud, hiding behind, I am a government official and so my hands are bloody tied. You took on a vocation. You took on a vow to represent and to protect our most vulnerable. But instead of this, we have persons in this society whose job it is, whose mandate it is, who have picked up a banner to say, I represent, and representing just their own selfish needs and agendas. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. When is it going to stop? When are we going to start caring? And I know there are a few idiots and morons out there who are going to be asking themselves the question that is asked of me every time I sound the clarion call on this sort of issue. Why are you taking it so personal? Why are you so passionate about it? Is it because you have been raped yourself? The fear of being raped is enough to move me. The fear of my child, my family, any child being raped is enough to move me. I don't have to be raped physically, mentally, psychologically, to be afraid, to have a passion that stirs within my heart, within my soul, to move and to say enough is enough. Why can't you, especially those of you who have let down to make these babies, why can't you be sufficiently moved? What is wrong with us? Why are we so apathetic? Why are we allowing these unscrupulous men, these people, to come into our lives? Why are we so jaded? You know, and the sad thing about it is, it does not only start and end with the parents. There's an entire system that lets down these children, because I cannot believe a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, or 11-year-old would be raped and that there would be absolutely no changes in her behavior or his behavior, and that there are teachers out there who would recognize changes and do nothing about it, and that there would be community members who would hear incriminating things and not go to the police or go to social services, who would see these atrocities and not do anything about it and say, oh, it's not my business, it's not my child, I felt threatened. We all have smartphones, and every smartphone comes with a camera, and we whip those damn things out every time there is an accident and there's carnage on the road, and the victims' private parts are splayed all, and we're all up in there like we're some damn gynecologists. We do it all the time, except when it matters. Except when it matters. We violate people's privacy all the time, except when it matters. And there has got to be something damagingly wrong with that. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? And we say we are a Christian nation, and we praise God every Saturday or Sunday, and Monday morning we go about our business just like the heathens do. And we actually help the heathens in the quest to plunder and destroy. But We are a hallelujah nation. We praise God every weekend. You know, we're a Bible-toting nation, and we're able to open up this book and to spew out all sort of scripture, except when it matters. It's as if the only salvation that is necessary, the only salvation that matters is our own personal, pathetic salvation. But do you realize that that salvation is contingent upon what you do to the least of your brothers? As Catholics and as Christians, you ought to know that. Your salvation is contingent upon what you do to the least of your brothers. And so when we go about our merry ways after praising God and hallelujah and dancing up a storm, let's think and spare a thought for tomorrow, for tomorrow's generation, who as we speak are being raped and plundered. We're due for a break. When we come back, a little bit more statistics on what happens around the world, not just in St. Lucia, but around the world as we speak. See you on the other side of the break. Welcome back. Can we lend a hand to save a life? Even though that life may not be remotely connected to us, can we lend a hand to save a life? Did you know that 1 in 5 women and girls aged 15 to 49 worldwide reported experiencing physical and or sexual violence by an intimate partner within a 12-month period? Did you know that homicide victims worldwide intentionally are killed by an intimate partner or family member? 47% overwhelmingly are women, 6% being men. Did you know that 49 countries around the world have no laws specifically protecting women from domestic violence? And did you know that 37 countries exempt rape perpetrators from prosecution if they are married to or subsequently marry the victim? Rape culture is nothing to sneeze at. And oftentimes, rape jokes, comments like girls should stay home, boys will be boys, even unequal pay, victim blaming, and we do that all the time, in particular to the most vulnerable of us, little girls and even little boys. Locker room banter, slamming that tonight, man. Those kinds of banter that we raucously laugh it up. Sexist attitudes. These are not isolated incidents. These are the stepping stones, the building blocks, the attitudes and the actions that reinforce and excuse those higher up this pyramid. It is systematic. From there, we go on to revenge porn, and we know all about it. Men began doing it to women, and now women are doing it to men. Catcalling, which we do all the time in our West Indian society, and we think it is so hilarious, and that every girl should feel privileged to have a man catcall her or whistle at her while she's passing and comment on her posterior. stalking, and we have quite a bit of it going on in St. Lucia, mind you. These lead to even more threatening gestures, such as sexual coercion, groping, you're at a fete, you're at a party, or you're at some fete, some area where there's a lot of people. And a man would take that opportunity, profit that opportunity to grope your butt. And it's not a matter of, okay, there's a lot of people and we're just passing by and we brushed you accidentally. They're literally cupping your butt cheeks or winding up on you and thinking it's okay because we're in a crowded place. And if you don't want that to happen to you, stay at your home. This then leads to the apex, where you have explicit violence taking place. Gang rapes and murders, molestation, rapes, violence, assaults. We need to start the conversation today. We need to change the dialogue. We need to start. And if it takes us screaming at the top of our lungs, we need to do that. Sustain the effort. We need to sustain the effort. What is it going to take? What is it going to take? But why is violence against women and girls, why does it matter so much? Why does it matter so much? Did you know that 1.2 million women worldwide are victims of domestic abuse every year? And did you know that over 400,000 women are sexually assaulted and raped, 70,000 of which is just rape? Did you know that 2 out of 3 incidents of domestic violence were experienced by rape victims? By repeat victims. So you experience it once and it leaves you so vulnerable. It leaves you open to having it done over and over and over again. Like in the case of Valinda Joseph, when nobody believed her. And it took her being murdered to be thrust in the national limelight. Did you know that in 2012, the Forced Marriage Unit provided advice or support to 1,500 people? And that there are many more cases that are not reported worldwide. Thankfully, in St. Lucia, I don't think we have the incidents of forced marriage. But it does exist in other parts of the world. And female genitalia mutilation, 66,000 women, plus 20,000 girls under the age of 15. Did you know that 2 women per week are killed by a partner or ex-partner or lover? These are the worldwide statistics. It means that it was gathered around the globe, and we're a part of that. And what is so saddening for us in our part of the world is that we don't seem to care. We don't seem to care. We only pay lip service and say, if it is my child, I'm gonna. That's not when it should matter. It should matter before. We should be sufficiently scared now to do something about it now. Not when it happens, but today, tomorrow, now. I tell you, sometimes, St. Lucia, we really need to take stock. We really need to take stock. Because what is happening around the world, those pictures that I showed earlier of the little girls been ripped asunder. It has happened here. And I dare say it will continue to happen here if we do not take stock. Awareness plus action equal social change. That is what we need to remember. We need to be aware. But awareness is not enough. We need to take action to effect a social change. The lines are now open. The number to call is 451-9788. Your WhatsApp messages are welcome on 284-6536, and your email messages can be sent on laurajapier@gmail.com. What is your take? What is your action going to be? How are you going to be a part of the movement to protect the daughters of St. Lucia from the fathers of St. Lucia? And it is so sad because last week I applauded a father for being there for his son, for allowing him to be, just to be, to explore the world around him, despite what most of us would say would be a disappointment, and to be there for him. And today, 7 short days later, have to deal with the fact that a father, whether there's a step before it or not, he is a father because he has children of his own, would decide to rape a child that once he got involved with the mother, took on the responsibility of caring for that child along with the mother. You have children of your own. How would it feel? How would you feel if some man were to do this to your daughter? How would that make you feel as a man? It really is sad. It really is sad. Somebody says to me, I would castrate him myself. Somebody else says, I would burn him down. These are all the things that we hear about in countries like India. And even India, with its high incidence of rapes, have now said that to rape a child is to effectively murder a child, and that deserves the death penalty or life imprisonment. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? Do we want to get to the point of India, where 17 men can kidnap a child and rape her day in and day out, because they feel protected by the law, because the law was so ineffective that they were confident that they would have gotten away with it? You know, it's really sad. It really is sad. We have no calls. I hope it is because we are so outraged that we are immobilized. Because I get the WhatsApp messages. I'm getting the WhatsApp messages. And it's all to do with more violence. More violence. But what are we going to do to ensure that it doesn't happen, so that it doesn't get to the point where we now have to become violent ourselves? What is our role going to be to protect our daughters, the daughters of St. Lucia? What action are we going to take to effect a social change? What will it take for us to be sufficiently moved, not with those simple talk. We've got our first call. You're on the air. Good night, you're on the air. Are we losing the call? Is the caller still online?
It's your call at the moment.
Hello?
If you know your party's extension, please dial it now.
Okay, I think we lost the call. What are we going to do? How are we going to lend a hand to save a life? What is going to happen thereafter? Somebody says to me, good evening, you're on the air? Hello?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Am I on the air?
Yes, you are.
Yes. I am calling to let St. Lucia know that I was a victim. I was brought up in a family of incest. And right now I cut off myself from that family, from mother, father, brother, and sister. And now they're looking at me that I'm as if like I'm not normal, like I am the one with the problem. I placed my children, my daughter, when I came back from Barbados in daycare. And my brother was literally having sex with my daughter. And my mom and my sisters, they all saying that this is not true, that I am lying. And right now my daughter is 30s, in her 30s, and I'm in my 50s, and I've been battling with that for years. And nobody's not listening, but I am standing alone right now. I have none of them. Nobody's not on my side. And imagine my stepfather, when I was living at that house, he used to take his middle finger, St. Lucia, put in my vagina to see if I had my hymen. And my mother stood up and watched. And this is happening. And right now it is sad to see, like, this, I don't know what is going on in St. Lucia, and this is sick. And to the point where right now it has been in the cycle, it's like it's been going on, like, sorry, this has been happening. And you find like people's faces are looking at you as if like when you talk about it, like you are lying. You understand what I'm saying? And then right now I have cut myself off from that.
Hello?
They're listening, and this is happening right here in St. Lucia. It's not too far from you. It is happening in Bexon. And my name is Cecilia, and I just want the world to know that what I'm going through. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And in times to come, I will have more to say. And I will stand up alone and speak the truth. And they are all living and walking all over the place as if nothing never happened. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that is so... And that's the thing we're talking about. Something like this has happened all these years ago. And when somebody comes out, I mean, what benefit do you get? Do you derive from saying I was raped? I mean, who wants that? St. Lucia in particular is such a closed up nation. It's such a closed society that you would put yourself to that ridicule. Hold yourself up to that ridicule. Just for what benefit? And what irks is when little children, innocent little children, come and say, this has happened to me, and moms in particular, because I will always stand for you. But I am always one to say, if you are wrong, you are wrong. And if you are right, you are right. I will stand by you. But don't tell me. Your little baby will come to you and say, Daddy did this to me. Uncle did this to me. Your boyfriend did this to me. And you are going to sit there and look at that baby and say to that little baby who has your DNA coursing through her soul, and tell her you're lying. You're lying. For what reason? So that you can cover for a piece of a douchebag? Are you serious? Did you hear the anguish in this lady's voice? She's been battling this for all these years. And up to a day like today, her family would rather have her cut them off than to stand in solidarity with her and deal with an issue that need not have hurt more than just one person. Because I'm certain, and the statistics will back me up, that when these perpetrators get away with doing it once, they continue to do it with impunity because they become fearless. They believe that they're untouchable, that the world is theirs to conquer. I have someone here who says to me, I would beat him to death. Not enough is being done to help our girls and babies in this country. It is shameless that men need to be beaten to death. It's outrageous. We need to put laws in place. We are not hearing from mothers and fathers groups. They're too busy dancing Western somewhere. Where are our women's groups? We're not hearing from them. And then she says to me, wow, such a brave woman. She's not alone. We need a Me Too movement in St. Lucia. And it's true. It's true. My email again is laurajapier@gmail.com, and I would like to implore the caller who was brave enough to call and share her story to drop me a line. I would really like to start corresponding with you. Maybe we could start a Me Too movement. Maybe we can just do that. The longest journey starts with one step. Again, the email to write to is laurajapier@gmail.com. It's really sad. On that note, we're all out of time. We'll close off the show by imploring you that it is not enough to just be aware, but there must be some corresponding action that will move a social change. Awareness plus action equals social change. Do you dare to make a difference? To reach out a helping hand to save one life. See you next week.
Shaggy and friends, you know. We all gotta do a part. What have I said? I dare you.
Well, I dare to make a difference, and I dare to take a stand. Let me dare to think of someone else who's in need of a helping hand.
What if I dare to show our children what it really means to love? Could I dare to just imagine there's nothing we can rise above? And I dare to be the person with the will to make it right. And I dare to have a conscience, to the cause and join the fight.
Would I dare to take a moment to remember to offer some relief.
Well, I dare you to make a difference, and I dare you to take a stand. Let me dare you to think of someone else in the need of a helping hand.
What if I did to show our children what it really means to love? Could I dare just to imagine there is nothing we can rise above?
We give a helping hand, show some love, this will no better overstand. I dare you to try save a life, let's make a change for once and take a stand. We still putting up resistance and fight with the help of Shark, Shaggy and Elephant.
Yo, 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 in the circle of life, if we not unite in the light, then we going nowhere. Time to reach new heights, every man got a right. We have been chanted in the air, and we brothers and sisters through the hard time in our life and the burden that we bear. Reach out with the helping hand, take a stand.